Somewhere beneath the frozen soil of Alaska, there's more gold than almost anywhere else on Earth. Not scattered in tiny flecks, but buried in veins, buried in riverbeds, locked inside rock that took hundreds of millions of years to form. In the late 1800s, a handful of prospectors found some of it lying loose in a creek bed, and within months, over 100,000 people dropped everything and rushed toward the edge of the map. They weren't chasing a rumor, they were chasing something real, a place where the Earth itself had been quietly stockpiling treasure for eons. But here's the part almost nobody asked. Why Alaska? Why did this cold, remote corner of the planet end up holding one of the richest concentrations of gold in the world? The answer starts underground, hundreds of millions of years before a single prospector ever set foot in the snow. To understand Alaska's gold, you have to go back to how gold forms in the first place. Deep beneath the surface, superheated water, pushed by volcanic heat, moves through cracks in the rock, picking up trace amounts of gold dissolved from the surrounding stone. As that mineral-rich water rises and cools, it can no longer hold the gold in solution. The gold drops out, crystallizing inside quartz veins, locked into the rock like a fingerprint of an ancient chemical reaction. Alaska sits along the edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates have spent millions of years grinding, folding, and colliding. That collision zone is a gold-forming machine that creates exactly the kind of heat pressure and fluid movement gold needs to concentrate underground. Over time, those veins get buried, uplifted, exposed, and eroded. Wind, ice, and rushing meltwater grind the surrounding rock into gravel. But gold is heavy, 19 times denser than water. So while lighter minerals wash downstream, gold sinks and settles into the bends of rivers and creek beds. This is what's called a placer deposit, gold that's already been freed from its rock and concentrated by nature into a spot a prospector with a simple pan could actually find. That's exactly what happened in August 1896, when gold was spotted glinting in a creek in the Yukon, and word of it reached a starving, economically depressed United States. The country had just come out of a brutal financial depression, and suddenly, here was a story of ordinary people striking it rich overnight. Within weeks, tens of thousands of people made the same decision: sell everything and head north. The Klondike Gold Rush wasn't glamorous, it was brutal. To even reach the gold fields, prospectors had to haul roughly a ton of supplies each, food, tools, tents, over mountain passes like the Chilkoot, climbing thousands of feet of ice in a single file line that stretched for miles. Canadian authorities eventually required it. Without a full year's worth of supplies, you weren't allowed to cross the border. Too many people had already died trying to survive an Arctic winter unprepared. Once prospectors reached the rivers, the work only got harder. In summer, the ground turned to mud. In winter, it froze solid, sometimes down to bedrock, forcing miners to light fires just to thaw a few inches of dirt at a time before they could dig further. And the odds were brutal too. Of the roughly 100,000 people who set out for the Klondike, only around 30 or 40,000 actually completed the journey, and only a small fraction of those ever struck real wealth. Most of the fortune in the end wasn't made by panning. It was made by the merchants, selling shovels, boots, and boat tickets to the desperate. The steadiest fortunes in the Klondike weren't dug out of the ground at all. They were built on top of everyone else's hope. But here's something most people get wrong about this whole story. The place that made it famous wasn't even where Alaska's own gold rush would happen. The twist most people miss: the Klondike Gold Rush wasn't even in Alaska. It was just across the border in Canada's Yukon territory. Alaska's own defining gold rush came a few years later in 1899, when gold was discovered on the beaches of Nome, right at the edge of the Bering Sea. This one was different. You didn't need to climb a mountain pass or survive a frozen river crossing. You just needed a shovel, a pan, and a stretch of open sand. Because the ocean itself, over thousands of years, had done the sorting for you, washing gold-bearing gravel down from inland streams and depositing it directly on the shoreline. Word spread fast that literally anyone could walk onto the beach and start digging. Tens of thousands rushed to Nome, turning a stretch of Arctic coastline into a booming, chaotic tent city almost overnight. It's a strange twist on the same physics from before. Heavy gold, sorted by moving water, concentrating wherever the current finally runs out of energy to carry it. Within a single year, Nome ballooned from a handful of prospectors into one of the largest towns in the entire Alaska Territory. Ships arrived constantly, unloading more hopeful prospectors and more supplies, feeding a boomtown economy that ran 24 hours a day under the midnight sun. It wasn't without conflict. Disputes over claims got so heated that federal troops eventually had to be sent in just to keep order on the beach. But even with the chaos, Nome proved something bigger. Alaska wasn't a one-time story. It had gold in more than one place, formed by the same relentless natural process. The gold rushes eventually faded, but they left something behind. They proved Alaska wasn't just a frozen wasteland the US had overpaid for. It was sitting on a fortune. Alaska had been purchased from Russia in 1867 for about $7.2 million. A deal so widely mocked at the time that newspapers called it Seward's Folly, after the Secretary of State who pushed for it. The gold rushes flipped that narrative almost overnight. In just the first few years of large-scale mining, the value of gold pulled from Alaska and the Yukon region dwarfed the original purchase price of the entire territory, and this was still early. As mining technology advanced, dredges capable of chewing through frozen gravel, hydraulic systems blasting hillsides apart with pressurized water, miners could reach gold deposits far larger and far deeper than anything a single prospector with a pan could ever access. Modern Alaska is still one of the top gold-producing states in the country, home to some of the largest gold mines in North America, proof that what started with a handful of desperate people in a creek bed was really just the surface of something much bigger. From a single glinting flake in a creek to beaches sorted by the tide to machines chewing through frozen ground at industrial scale, it's all the same story, just told at a different size. Altogether, Alaska's mines have produced tens of millions of ounces of gold since those first prospectors arrived, worth many billions of dollars at today's prices. What started as a wild, desperate gamble in the snow became one of the most valuable natural resource stories in American history. And it all traces back to the same simple truth: heat, pressure, and time, quietly building a fortune long before anyone was there to find it. So why did Alaska end up holding one of the richest gold concentrations on the planet? It comes down to geology stacking in its favor again and again, a tectonically active margin that cooked gold into quartz veins over millions of years, glaciers and rivers that spent ages grinding that rock apart and sorting the gold by weight, and a coastline where the ocean did the final easy work of laying it out on the sand. Heat, pressure, time, movement. Four simple forces working together for longer than humans have existed. Seward's Folly wasn't a folly at all. It was one of the most consequential land deals in American history, and the planet had simply been hiding the receipts underground, waiting a few 100 million years for anyone to notice. Today, that same ground is still producing a living legacy of pressure and patience written in stone. And somewhere out there, people are still panning those same rivers, chasing the same glint that started it all, because somewhere in that gravel, there's always a chance the Earth left one more piece behind, from a single flake in a pan to a state built on what the ground was willing to give up. Alaska turned out to be worth more than anyone in 1867 could have possibly imagined. A frozen folly that became one of the richest gold mines in the country, one crystal, one current, one century at a time.